Now, what is risk? What does risk mean? Risk refers to the potential for an undesirable outcome or deviation from the expected results. The potential for an undesirable outcome or deviation from the expected results. It encompasses various uncertainties that may affect the achievement of objectives, goals, or expectations. Risk is an inherent aspect of many activities, and managing it is crucial, very crucial for making informed decisions and minimizing negative impacts. Before we proceed, kindly take some few seconds to subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen. Kindly subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Kindly do so. Kindly click on the subscribe button on your screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Also click on the notification button to be notified whenever we release new videos such as this. Click on the notification button to get notified, to be the first to know when we release news videos such as this. Kindly do so within some few seconds. I'm waiting for you to do so if you have not done so yet. Thank you so much. Now we proceed. The components of risks. The components of risks. Risks consist of several components. Risks consist of several components, which include risk events, probability, impact, mitigation, resilience, uncertainty, volatility, exposure, risk tolerance, contingency planning. Again, risk events, probability, impact, mitigation, resilience, uncertainty, volatility, exposure, risk tolerance, and contingency planning. Now, what is risk event? Risk event is a specific incident or occurrence that may have a positive or negative impact on the project or organization. Examples include a data breach, natural disaster, or a sudden market shift. A data breach, natural disaster, or a sudden market shift. Probability. Probability refers to the likelihood or chance that a risk event will occur. The likelihood or chance that a risk event will occur. Examples include high, medium, or low probability of a specific event happening. High, medium, or low probability of a specific event happening. Next, impact. Impact refers to the magnitude of the consequences or effects if a risk event occurs. The magnitude of the consequences or effects if a risk event occurs. Examples include financial loss, reputational damage, or project delays. Financial loss, reputational damage, or project delays. Mitigation. Mitigation are actions taken to reduce the probability of a risk event occurring or to minimize its impact. An action taken to reduce the probability of a risk event occurring or to minimize the impact. Examples include implementing security measures, diversifying investments, or having contingency plans. Next, resilience. Now, resilience is the ability of a system or organization to withstand and recover from adverse events. The ability of a system or organization or project to withstand and recover from adverse events. An example includes building redundancies, creating robust infrastructure or having crisis management plans. Building redundancies, creating robust infrastructure, or having crisis management plans. Next, uncertainty. Uncertainty. Uncertainty refers to lack of knowledge or predictability regarding future events. Lack of knowledge or predictability regarding future events. Examples include changes in market trends, changes in market trends, regulatory developments or technological advancements, changes in market trends, regulatory developments or technological advancements. Next, volatility. Volatility. Volatility refers to the degree of variation of a trading price series over time. The degree of variation of a trading price series over time. Example includes fluctuations in financial markets or exchange rates. Fluctuations in financial markets or exchange rates. Next, exposure. Exposure. Exposure refers to the degree to which an organization or project is susceptible to the impact of a risk. The degree to which an organization or project is susceptible to the impact of a risk. An example is a company heavily depending on a single supplier. Such a company is more exposed to supplier-related risks. Next, risk tolerance. Risk tolerance. Now, the level of risks that an organization or individual is willing to accept is referred to as risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is the level of risks that an organization or an individual is willing to accept. An example is a conservative investor having a low risk tolerance, while an aggressive investor having a higher risk tolerance. And usually, that is what is usually the reality. A conservative investor usually have low risk tolerance, while aggressive investor usually have a higher risk tolerance. Contingency planning. Contingency planning. Contingency planning involves preparing for and responding to potential risks through predetermined strategies. Preparing for and responding to potential risks through predetermined strategies. Examples include developing backup systems, creating emergency response plans, or establishing crisis communication protocols. Again, developing backup plans, creating emergency response plans, or establishing crisis communication protocols. Understanding and managing these components of risks allows individuals and organizations to make more informed decisions and navigate uncertainties effectively. Risk management involves assessing, prioritizing, and responding to risks to achieve a balance between risks and reward. Types and risk categories. Types and risk categories. Risks can be classified or categorized into various types based on different criteria. The following are some examples of the different types of risks. The first is financial risks, second, operational risks, third, strategic risks, compliance risks, project risks, environmental risks, human resources risks, cybersecurity risks, supply chain risks, country and political risks. Now, financial risks. Financial risks can be further classified into three types, and these are market risk, credit risk, liquidity risks. Now, market risk is a type of financial risk that involves financial loss due to changes in the market prices or interest rates. Again, Market risk involves the risk of financial loss due to changes in market prices or interest rates. Second type of financial risk is credit risk. Credit risk is the risk of loss from the failure of a borrower to repay a loan or meet contractual obligations. The risk of loss from the failure of a borrower to repay a loan or meet contractual obligations. Liquidity risk. Liquidity risk is the risk of not being able to meet short-term financial obligations. The risk of not being able to meet short-term financial obligations. Operational risk. Operational risk. Now, operational risk can be classified into three. Operational risk can be further classified into three types, into three categories. First is internal risk, second external risk, third compliance risks. Now, internal risks are risks arising from internal processes, systems, people, or events. External risks are risks stemming, arising from external factors like natural disasters, political events, or technological failures. Compliance risks. Compliance risks are the risks of legal or regulatory sanctions, financial loss, or damage to reputation due to failure to comply with laws and regulations. Strategic risks. Strategic risks is yet another major type of risks. Strategic risks can be classified into three. The first is reputational risks, second competitive risks, the third strategic management risk. Now reputational risks. Now the reputational risks is the risk of damage to an organization's reputation, which can impact its brand value and customer trust. The risk of damage to an organization's reputation, which can impact its brand value and customer trust. Competitive risks. Competitive risks are risks associated with changes in the competitive landscape or failure to adapt to market trends. Risks associated with failures in the in the competitive landscape or failure to adapt to market trends. Strategic management risk. Strategic management risks are risks related to the formulation and execution of business strategies. Risks related to the formulation and execution of business strategies. Next is compliance risks. Compliance risks. Compliance risks can be classified into legal risks and regulatory risks. Now, legal risks. Legal risks are the risks of financial loss or damage to reputation due to legal actions or non-compliance with laws. Risks of financial loss or damage to reputation due to legal actions or non-compliance with laws. Now, how about regulatory risks? Regulatory risks are risks associated with changes in regulations affecting the business environment. Risks associated with changes in regulations affecting the business environment. Project risks. Project risks. Now, project risks can be classified into two: project management risks and technology risks. Now, project management risks are risks related to the planning, execution, and completion of projects. Risks are related to the planning, execution, and completion of projects. While technology risks are risks associated with the adoption, implementation, or maintenance of new technologies. Risks associated with the adoption, implementation, or maintenance of new technologies. Environmental risks. Environmental risks are classified into two: natural risks and climate risks. Natural risks and climate risks. Now, natural risks are risks arising from natural disasters such as earthquakes, floods, or hurricanes. Risks arising from natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, or hurricanes, while climate risks are risks related to climate change and its impact on business operations. The next is human resources risks. Human resources risks. Human resources risks can be classified into workforce risks and succession risks. Workforce risks and succession risks. Workforce risks are risks associated with employee recruitment, retention, and performance. Risks associated with employee recruitment, retention, and performance. While succession risks are risks related to the lack of sustainable replacement for key personnel. Risks related to the lack of suitable replacement for key personnel. The next is cybersecurity risks. Cybersecurity risks can be classified into data breach risks and phishing and social engineering risks. Data breach risks, phishing, and social engineering risks. And data breach risks are risks of unauthorized access to sensitive data. The risks of unauthorized access to sensitive data. While phishing and social engineering risks are risks associated with deceptive tactics to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential information. Risks associated with deceptive tactics to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential information. The next is supply chain risks. Supply chain risks. Supply chain risks involves risks related to disruptions in the supply chain, such as shortages, delays, or geopolitical issues. Risks related to disruptions in the supply chain, such as shortages, delays, or geopolitical issues. The next is country and political risks. Country and political risks. Country and political risks in, are risks. There are risks associated with changes in government policies or political unrest in a country. Risks associated with changes in government, in policies, or political unrest in a country. Now, it's important to know that many risks are interconnected, and organizations often face a combination of these risks. Effective risk management involves identifying, assessing, and mitigating these risks to ensure the sustainability and success of the organization. Risk identification. Risk identification. Identifying and managing risks is a critical aspect of organizational and project management. Identifying and managing risks is a crucial, a critical, a key aspect of organizational and project management. The following are some methods for recognizing risks, identifying risks at both levels, both the organizational level and the project level. Now, for the organizational level, we have SWOT analysis, PERSOL analysis, risk audits, benchmarking, and scenario planning. SWOT analysis, PERSOL analysis, risk audits, benchmarking, and scenario planning. Now, SWOT analysis. SWOT represents strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, assessing the internal strengths and weaknesses of an organization, as well as external opportunities and threats, helps identify potential risks relevant or related to the organization. The next is PERSOL analysis. PERSOL represents political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. So the combination of all of this gives rise to PERSOL analysis. Examining the external macro environmental factors can reveal risks associated with changes in the business environment. The next is risk audits. Risk audits. Regularly reviewing and auditing organizational processes and systems to identify areas where risks may arise. This is covered in risk audits. The next is benchmarking. Benchmarking involves comparing the organization's performance against industry standards, and this can help highlight areas where the organization might be at risk. The next is scenario planning. Scenario planning. Now, developing scenarios of potential future events helps in identifying risks and preparing for various possible outcomes. Before we proceed, kindly take some few seconds to subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen. Kindly subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Kindly do so. Kindly click on the subscribe button on your screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Also click on the notification button to be notified whenever we release new videos such as this. Click on the notification button to get notified, to be the first to know when we release news videos such as this. Kindly do so within some few seconds. I'm waiting for you to do so if you have not done so yet. Thank you so much. Now we proceed. Now, the next level is project level. The next risk identification level is the project level. And this includes risk identification workshops, documentation review, checklist, assumption analysis, SWOT analysis for projects, dependency analysis, historical data and lessons learned, and expert judgment. Risk identification workshops. Risk identification workshops are bringing together project stakeholders to brainstorm and identify potential risks associated with the project. Is one key step to identify risks at the project level. Documentation review. Now, this involves examining project documents, plans, and requirements in order to identify inconsistencies, gaps, or areas prone to risks. The next is checklists. Using predefined checklists to systematically identify common project risks based on past experiences and industry knowledge. The next is assumption analysis. This involves identifying and examining assumptions made during project planning to ensure that they are valid and not posing potential risks. Identifying and examining assumptions made during project planning to ensure that they are valid and not posing potential risks. SWOT analysis for projects. SWOT analysis for projects. Applying SWOT analysis specifically to the project's context helps identify internal and external factors that may impact project success. Dependency analysis. Dependency analysis. Understanding dependencies between different project activities and external factors can help identify risks associated with these dependencies. Historical data and lessons learned. Analyzing data from past projects and incorporating lessons learned can provide insights into potential risks and how to mitigate them. Expert judgment. Seeking input from experts in relevant domains to identify risks that might not be apparent to the project team. This can be handled using expert judgment. So expert judgment involves seeking input from experts in relevant domains to identify potential risks that might not be apparent to the project team. Continuous monitoring and feedback. Continuous monitoring and feedback. Now, this can be done in using these three methods, which are regular risk reviews, key performance indicators, feedback loops. Now, regular risk reviews. Now, this involves scheduling periodic reviews to reassess and update the risk register as the project or organization progresses. Periodic reviews to reassess and update the risk register as the project or organization progresses. KPIs, key performance indicators. This involves monitoring KPIs, key performance indicators, in order to help in identifying deviations from planned performance and potential risks. So monitoring KPIs help in identifying deviations from planned performance and potential risks. Next is feedback loops. Feedback loops. This involves establishing mechanisms for stakeholders to provide feedback on potential risks based on their observations and experiences. Now, by combining these methods, organizations and project teams can develop a comprehensive understanding of potential risks and proactively implement strategies to mitigate them. Now, remember that risk management is an ongoing process that should be integrated into the overall project and organizational management practices. Risk assessments and analysis. Risk assessment and analysis. Risk assessment can be classified into two: quantitative risk assessment and qualitative risk assessment. Quantitative and qualitative risk assessment techniques are essential components of risk management, helping organizations identify, evaluate, and prioritize potential risks. These techniques provide a systematic approach to understanding the likelihood and impact of various risks. Now we delve into the meaning and the various subcategories of both quantitative and qualitative risk assessment methods. Now, quantitative risk assessment can be further classified into two. We have risk measurement and data analysis. Risk measurement and data analysis. Now, risk measurement can be further classified into four. You have probability and impact assessment, probability and impact assessment, expected monetary value, EMV, sensitivity analysis, and Monte Carlo simulation. Now, why data analysis, which is also a class of quantitative risk assessment, can be further classified into historical data analysis and statistical data analysis. So historical data analysis and statistical models or statistical data analysis. Now, coming back to risk measurement. The first subcategory of risk measurement is probability and impact assessment. Probability and impact assessment. Now, probability and impact assessment involves quantifying the likelihood and consequences of risks using numerical scales. Quantifying the likelihood and the consequences of risks using numerical scales. For example, using a scale from 1 to 5 for probability and impact. The second is expected monetary value, EMV. This involves assigning a monetary value to each risk by multiplying its probability of occurrence by the potential cost impact. Assigning a monetary value to each risk by multiplying its probability of occurrence by the potential cost impact. That is, EMV equals probability times impact. EMV multiplied by impact. EMV equals probability multiplied by impact. The next is sensitivity analysis. Sensitivity analysis. This involves examining the sensitivity of project outcomes to changes in individual risk factors to identify critical variables. Examining the sensitivity of project outcomes to changes in individual risk factors to identify critical variables. The fourth is Monte Carlo simulation. This involves simulating various scenarios using random sampling to estimate the probability distribution of possible outcomes. Simulating various scenarios using random sampling to estimate the probability distribution of possible outcomes. Now, data analysis. As initially said, data analysis is subcategorized into historical data analysis and statistical models. Historical data analysis and statistical models. Now, historical data analysis involves utilizing past data and historical records to quantify the likelihood and impact of risks, utilizing past data and historical records to quantify the likelihood and impact of risks. Next one is statistical models, which involves applying statistical methods to analyze and predict potential risks, such as regression analysis. Now, the next is qualitative risk assessment. Qualitative risk assessment. Before we proceed, kindly take some few seconds to subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen. Kindly subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Kindly do so. Kindly click on the subscribe button on your screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Also, click on the notification button to be notified whenever we release new videos such as this. Click on the notification button to get notified, to be the first to know when we release news videos such as this. Kindly do so within some few seconds. I'm waiting for you to do so if you have not done so yet. Thank you so much. Now we proceed. Now, qualitative risk assessment can be further classified into risk identification, risk evaluation, risk prioritization, documentation and communication, and expert judgment. Now, risk identification. Risk identification can be classified into two: brainstorming sessions and checklists and templates. Now, brainstorming sessions involves engaging key stakeholders in discussions to identify and document potential risks. Engaging key stakeholders in discussions to identify and document potential risks. Checklists and templates. This involves using predefined lists or templates to systematically identify risks associated with specific projects or processes. Using predefined lists or templates to systematically identify risks associated with specific projects or processes. Risk evaluation. Risk evaluation can be classified into two. You have risk matrix and risk probability and impact assessment. Risk matrix and risk probability and impact assessment. Risk matrix involves placing risks on a matrix based on their likelihood and impact, categorizing them as low, medium, or high risk. Risk probability and impact assessment. This involves subjectively assessing the likelihood and impact of risks using qualitative scales. The next is risk prioritization. Risk prioritization. Risk prioritization can be classified further into risk heat maps and risk categorization. Risk heat maps and risk categorization. Now, risk heat maps involve visualizing risks on a heat map to highlight those that require immediate attention. Visualizing risks on a heat map to highlight those that require immediate attention. Risk categorization involves grouping risks based on common characteristics such as project phase or source. Grouping risks based on common characteristics such as project phase or source. Documentation and communication. This can be classified into two ways or two methods of doing it. There are two ways of doing it. We have first risk registers and then risk communication plans. Risk registers and risk communication plans. These are the two tools or two ways in which risk documentation and communication can be conducted. Now, risk registers. Risk registers involves maintaining comprehensive record of identified risks, their potential impacts, and planned responses. Maintaining a comprehensive record, documented information of identified risks, their potential impacts, and planned responses. Risk communication plans. Risk communication plans involves developing strategies to communicate risks and mitigation plans to relevant stakeholders. Developing strategies to communicate risks and mitigation plans to relevant stakeholders. Expert judgment. Expert judgment involves two ways or can be done in two ways. You have interviews and surveys. Interviews and surveys, and then Deerfield method or Deerfield technique. Interviews and surveys and Deerfield Delfield technique. Now, interviews and surveys involve seeking expert opinions through structured interviews or surveys to gather qualitative insights. Seeking expert opinions through structured interviews or surveys to gather qualitative insights. Delfield technique. This involves iterative rounds of anonymous feedback from a panel of experts to achieve consensus on risk assessments. Iterative rounds of anonymous feedback from a panel of experts to achieve consensus on risk assessments. Now, integration of quantitative and qualitative approaches. Now, in many cases, a hybrid approach that combines both quantitative and qualitative methods is employed. This allows organizations to benefit from the strengths of each method and create a more robust risk management strategy. Now, ultimately, the choice between quantitative and qualitative techniques often depends on factors such as the nature of the project, available data, and the organization's risk tolerance. Impact and likelihood risk prioritization. Impact and likelihood risk prioritization. Now, prioritizing and analyzing risks based on their impact and likelihood is a crucial aspect of risk management. And this process helps organizations focus their resources on the most significant and probable risks. Now, the following are step-by-step guide on how to prioritize and analyze risks. The first is identify risks, that is risk identification. The second is to define impact and likelihood criteria. The third is to quantify impact and likelihood. The fourth is to create a risk matrix. The fifth or the sixth is to calculate risk severity. Next, prioritize risks. Next, consider risk tolerance. Next, again, review and adjust. Then, develop mitigation strategies. And finally, monitor and communicate. Now, risk identification or identify risks. Now, begin by identifying potential risks that could affect your project, organization, or initiative. This can be done through brainstorming sessions, historical data analysis, and expert interviews. Second, define impact and likelihood criteria. Now, clearly define the criteria for assessing the impact and likelihood of each identified risk. Now, each impact refers to the magnitude of the consequences if the risk event occurs, while likelihood refers to the probability of the risk occurring. Next, which is the third, is to quantify impact and likelihood. Now, use a numerical scale to quantify the impact and likelihood of each risk. For example, you can use a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is low and 5 is high. This will provide a more structured way to assess and compare risks. The fourth is to create a risk matrix. Develop a risk matrix that incorporates the impact and likelihood scores. The matrix can be a simple grid with impact on one axis and likelihood on the other. This matrix helps visualize the overall risk profile and facilitates prioritization. The fifth is to calculate risk severity. Now, multiply the impact score by the likelihood score to calculate the risk severity. This combined score gives a more comprehensive view of the risks. Higher severity scores indicate risks that require more attention. Sixth, prioritize risks. Sort the risks based on their severity scores from highest to lowest. This prioritization helps in focusing on addressing the most critical risks first. Consider risk tolerance. Now, take into account the organization's risk tolerance and thresholds. Now, some organizations may be more risk averse, now while others may be willing to accept higher risks for potential higher rewards. The eighth, review and adjust. Regularly review and update the risk assessment as the project or situation evolves. New risks may emerge and the impact or likelihood of existing risks may change. Develop mitigation strategies. Once risks are prioritized, develop mitigation strategies for high priority risks. These strategies may involve risk avoidance, risk reduction, risk sharing, or risk acceptance. Next, monitor and communicate. Implement a monitoring system to track the effectiveness of mitigation strategies, regularly communicates the status of risks of risks to stakeholders, and be prepared to adjust strategies as needed. Now, remember that risk management is an ongoing process, and it is important to be proactive in identifying, assessing, and addressing risks throughout the life of a project or operation. Risk mitigation strategies, risk mitigation strategies, or risk response strategies. Now, risk response strategies or risk mitigation strategies are crucial, very important in managing uncertainties and potential issues that may arise during a project or in business operations. There are several commonly recognized risk response or mitigation strategies, and these are transfer, risk avoidance, risk mitigation, and risk acceptance. Now, risk transfer can be done in two ways: insurance and contracts and agreements. Insurance and or contracts and agreements. Now, insurance. Now, this involves transferring the risk to an insurance company by purchasing insurance policies that cover specific risks. Transferring the risks to an insurance company by purchasing insurance policies that cover specific risks. The next is contracts and agreements. This involves transferring risks to another party through contracts, outsourcing, or partnerships, where the responsibility for certain risks is shifted to the contracted party. Risk avoidance. Avoidance can be done in two ways, either by not engaging in the activity or ceasing an activity. Not engaging in the activity or ceasing an activity. Now, not engaging in the activity involves avoiding the risks altogether by choosing not to pursue a particular project, venture, or activity. Ceasing an activity. If a risk becomes too significant, stop the activity or project that is associated with the risk. The next is mitigation. Mitigation can be done in two ways: risk reduction and contingency planning. Risk reduction and contingency planning. Risk reduction can be done by implementing actions to reduce the likelihood or impact of a risk. This could involve improving processes, technology, or personnel skills. Contingency planning involves developing contingency plans to respond effectively if a risk event occurs. This involves preparing in advance to minimize the impact. The next is acceptance. This can be done in two ways: active acceptance and passive acceptance. Active acceptance involves acknowledging the risk and its potential impact, but choosing not to take any specific action. And this is often appropriate for risks with low impact or probability. The next is passive acceptance. This involves acknowledging the risks but taking no action, essentially letting things unfold without specific preparation. Now, choosing the most appropriate risk response or mitigation strategy depends on various factors, including the nature of the risks, the organization's risk tolerance, and the potential impact on obligations. Now, often a combination of these strategies is employed to address different aspects of complex risk landscape. It is important to know that risk management, once again, is an ongoing process. So monitoring and reassessment of risks are essential to ensure that the chosen strategies remain relevant and effective as circumstances change. Before we proceed, kindly take some few seconds to subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen. Kindly subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Kindly do so. Kindly click on the subscribe button on your screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Also, click on the notification button to be notified whenever we release new videos such as this. Click on the notification button to get notified, to be the first to know when we release news videos such as this. Kindly do so within some few seconds. I'm waiting for you to do so if you have not done so yet. Thank you so much. Now we proceed. Monitoring and controlling risks. Monitoring and controlling risks. Implementing monitoring systems for ongoing risk assessment involves a combination of tools, processes, and strategies to identify, analyze, and mitigate risks in real time. The following are step-by-step guide or ways to help set up such a system, monitoring and controlling risk systems, or risk monitoring and controlling systems. The first step is to define risk criteria. The second is to identify key risk indicators, KRIs. The third is to select monitoring tools. The fourth is to automate data collection. The fifth is to establish baselines. The seventh is to continuously monitor or continuous monitoring. The eighth is incident response plan, developing incident response plan. The ninth is regular risk assessments. The 10th is employee training. Next, integration with business operations or business processes. Next, again, is audit and review. And then finally, to adapt to emerging risks. Now, risk criteria definition. Defining risk criteria. Now, clearly define the criteria for identifying risks in your projects, in your organization. This could involve or include financial risks, operational risks, cybersecurity risks, compliance and legal risks, and others. Next, identify key risk indicators, KRIs, key risk indicators. And determine the risk metrics and indicators that will serve as early warning signs for potential risks. These can be quantitative or qualitative measures that directly relate to your predefined risk criteria. The next is select monitoring tools, selecting monitoring tools. Now, choose appropriate tools for monitoring and collecting data. This could involve or include risk management software, which involves implementing specialized softwares that allows you to centralize risk data, track incidents, and generate reports. The next is security information and event management. Risk security information and event management systems. Now, for monitoring and analyzing security events in real time, you may want to involve security information and event management systems. Next is key performance indicators dashboards. Now, it is also a modern tool used in visualizing and monitoring key metrics. The fourth step is to automate data collection. Automate the collection of data from various sources to ensure real-time monitoring. This might involve integrating your monitoring tools with existing systems and databases. Next is to establish baselines. Establish baseline values for your KRIs. Now, this provides a reference point for what is considered normal, making it easier to identify anomalies. Continuous monitoring. Implement continuous monitoring processes to keep track of changes in key metrics. This might involve setting up alerts or triggers for specific threshold breaches. Incident response plan. Develop a clear incident response plan that outlines the steps to be taken when a potential risk is identified. This plan should include roles and responsibilities, communication strategies, and escalation procedures. Regular risk assessments. This involves conducting risk assessments to update your risks or to update risk criteria, KRIs, and monitoring processes. Risks evolve, so your monitoring system should adapt accordingly. Employee training. Ensure that employees are trained on the monitoring tools and understand their role in the risk management processes. Now, awareness is key to ensure to early detection and response. Integration with business processes. Integrate risk monitoring into existing business processes. This ensures that risk management becomes a part of everyday operations rather than a separate activity. Audit and review your process. Regularly audit and review the effectiveness of your monitoring system. Use feedback and insights gained from the audit process to improve and refine your processes continually. Adapt to emerging risks. Stay informed about emerging risks in your industry or sector. Update your monitoring system to address new and evolving threats. Remember that an effective monitoring system is not a one-time setup, but an ongoing process that requires constant attention and refinement. Regularly reassess and update your approach to ensure its relevance and effectiveness in managing risks. Feedback loops in risk management. Feedback loops in risk management. Now, feedback loops play a crucial role in risk management by providing a mechanism for monitoring, assessing, and adjusting strategies to address potential risks. And these loops help organizations adapt to changing circumstances, identify emerging risks, and refine their risk management processes. Now, the following is an overview of the role of feedback loops in risk management. The first is continuous monitoring. Now, feedback loops enable continuous monitoring of internal and external factors that may pose risks to an organization. Now, regularly collecting and analyzing data helps identify new risks or changes in the risk landscape. Next is early detection. Early detection. Feedback loops contribute to early detection of potential issues by facilitating real-time or near real-time monitoring. Now, timely identification allows for prompt action to mitigate or manage risks before they escalate. Assessment and analysis. Feedback loops help in assessing the impact and likelihood of identified risks. Now, ongoing analysis ensures that risk assessments are based on the latest information, allowing for accurate risk prioritization. Adaptation and adjustment. Based on feedback, organizations can adjust their risk management strategies and tactics. Adaptive risk management allows for agility in response to evolving threats or changes in the business environment. Learning and improvement. Feedback loops provide opportunities for learning from past experiences and the outcomes of risk management strategies. Now, this learning process enables continuous improvement in risk management practices over time. Communication and collaboration. Effective feedback loops enhance communication and collaboration within an organization. Information about risks and their management can be shared across departments, fostering a more integrated approach to risk management. Iterative risk assessments. Now, risk assessments are not static. They should be revisited and revised regularly. Feedback loops support an iterative approach to risk assessment, ensuring that risk profiles stay relevant and up to date. Technology and automation. Feedback loops can be enhanced through the use of technology and automation. Now, automated risk monitoring and reporting systems can streamline the feedback process, making it more efficient and responsive. Scenario analysis. Feedback loops facilitate scenario analysis to explore potential future risks and their potential impacts. And this proactive approach helps organizations prepare for a range of possibilities and even those that may not be immediately evident. In summary, feedback loops in risk management contributes to a dynamic and responsive approach in identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks. They are essential for organizations seeking to navigate an ever-changing business or project management environment effectively. Risk communication and reporting. Risk communication and reporting. Now, effective communication of risks to stakeholders is crucial for ensuring informed decision making and maintaining trust. And the following are some strategies for conveying risks to stakeholders, for communicating risk findings to stakeholders. The first thing is to understand your audience. Now, tailor your communication to the specific needs and interests of your audience. Consider the level of technical expertise and familiarity with the subject matter. Next, use clear and simple language. Use clear and simple language. Avoid technical jargons and use plain language to communicate risks. This helps in ensuring that all stakeholders, regardless of their background, can understand the information easily. Next, provide context. Frame the risks within the larger context of the project or organization. Help stakeholders understand how the risks relate to overall goals and objectives. Visualize aids, the use of visual aids. The use of visual aids. Now, utilize visual aids such as charts, graphs, and diagrams to illustrate the nature and magnitude of the risks. Now, visual representations can make complex information more digestible. Next, scenario planning. Present different scenarios that could unfold based on the identified risk. This can help stakeholders visualize potential outcomes and better understand the implications. Next, prioritize risks. Now, clearly communicate the level of severity and likelihood of each risk. Prioritize risks based on their potential impacts, allowing stakeholders to focus on the most critical issues. Offer solutions and mitigation strategies. That is the next step, the next thing that you can do. Now, instead of just presenting problems, provide potential solutions and mitigation strategies for each identified risk. This demonstrates proactive planning and can instill confidence in stakeholders. Engage in two-way communication. Engage in two-way communication. Encourage questions and feedback. Foster an open dialogue to address concerns and ensure that stakeholders feel heard. Now, this can also provide valuable insights into how risks are perceived. Before we proceed, kindly take some few seconds to subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen. Kindly subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Kindly do so. Kindly click on the subscribe button on your screen, either on your left hand side or on your right hand side. Also, click on the notification button to be notified whenever we release new videos such as this. Click on the notification button to get notified, to be the first to know when we release news videos such as this. Kindly do so within some few seconds. I'm waiting for you to do so if you have not done so yet. Thank you so much. Now we proceed. Next, regular updates. Regular updates. Now, keep stakeholders informed with regular updates on the status of risks. This ongoing communication helps maintain transparency and allows for adjustment in strategies as the situation evolves. Next, use multiple channels. Use multiple channels. Now, employ a variety of communication channels such as meetings, reports, emails, and presentations. Different stakeholders may prefer different mediums, so diversifying your approach can enhance understanding. Next, training and workshops. Conduct training sessions or workshops to educate stakeholders on risk management principles. This can enhance their understanding of the risk landscape and build a shared vocabulary. The next is crisis communication plan. Crisis communication plan. Develop a clear plan for communicating during a crisis. Define roles and responsibilities and ensure that stakeholders understand or know how information will be disseminated in high stakes very risky situations. Now, legal and ethical considerations. Legal and ethical considerations. Clearly communicate any legal or ethical considerations related to the identified risk. This is very important, very, very important. Clearly communicate any legal or ethical considerations related to the identified risks. And this ensures that stakeholders are aware of potential implications. The stakeholders are what? Are aware of potential implications and can make decisions accordingly. It helps stakeholders to be aware of potential implications and will enable them make decisions, informed decisions accordingly. Now, next thing is to celebrate successes, celebrate wins. Now, acknowledge and celebrate successes in risk management. Acknowledge and celebrate wins, successes in risk management, in all of your risk management efforts. Now, this positive reinforcement can build confidence, in stakeholders and demonstrate the effectiveness of risk management or risk mitigation strategies that you developed in the process of your risk management endeavors. Remember, effective communication is an ongoing process. Very important to take note of this. That effective communication is what? An ongoing process. As such, regularly assess and adapt your communication strategies. Regularly assess and adapt your communication strategies based on feedback, and changes in the risk landscape, based on feedback and changes in the risk landscape. If you haven't done so yet, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the screen. Also, click on the notification button to get notified of our future videos. If you find this video especially helpful, please do not hesitate to like and share with your audience on social media.